Welcome to Healing for the Soul podcast, with this being season number 4, episode number 57. I am your host, Robin Stoltman, and today I have my guest, Mark Merriwether Vorderbruggen, Ph.D., chemist and herbalist, on the show talking about Caveman days. But before we get started, remember every week I feature different guests to help you become the best version of yourself through different methods you may not have heard of or thought of. So let's get started. Thank you, Mark, for being
All right.
here.
Quick note, it's Vorderbruggen. You threw an
Vorderbruggen. Okay.
yeah.
Awesome.
There's a bunch of R's and only one in at the end, but hence the name Merriwether. It's a lot easier.
Well, yes, that makes it so much easier. So, what is your specialty?
Ooh, wow. Okay, so by education, I have a master's in medicinal chemistry, a PhD in physical organic chemistry, but I've always focused on natural products and accidentally found myself an expert in edible and medicinal plants. I've given talks in Canada, the US, Israel, Afghanistan. They're all places that are into it. And so I guess my true calling, I've realized through that, is I'm a professional caveman and trying to reintroduce people to cavemanosity as how it helps them in their modern world and adapting to the modern world.
You know, that would be helpful. That's why I'm excited about this talk. So, is there anybody special that you like to work with within bringing them back to this caveman?
Oh, actually, parents are big on the list because one thing I found is the parents of like the kids generation right now have little to no experience with nature and are actually quite afraid of it. And so they impart this fear of nature onto their kids.
Wow.
You should respect nature. You shouldn't fear nature. And making kids scared of nature does not bode well for the planet Earth.
No, it does not. I'm like thinking, who would actually do that to their kids? I mean, like mine, they like to go outside. You can't keep them indoors.
But with most parents nowadays, every plant is poison ivy, every mushroom is a destroying angel, and every snake is poisonous. There's a huge movement to keep kids indoors and not outdoors. Luckily, there's a movement to get kids outdoors too, and I'm on that side of the fence.
Yeah, me too. Because yeah, we wouldn't want to. I can't imagine trying to keep. Well, I know for a fact I can't keep my boys inside. Keeping the boys inside is like hell for me. I'm just saying straight out.
That's kind of what set me on my path of nature. Is I have two brothers. All three of us were born within a 2-year period. And the only way my parents could stay sane with this was to get us outdoors every day. And while we were out there, they're saying, yeah, grandma and my mom used to use this plant for toothaches and this plant is food. And they had us, harvesting and using all the nature. And it just was a part of my life.
Well, that's good. I feel a lot better because I'm teaching my kids, go outside, let's do plants. Let's do that stuff. And the house has more plants than what my mom would like. But I'm like, well, this is a good thing. I want my boys to be boys, and because they drive me crazy otherwise inside the house. I'm just saying. They climb on everything, and it's like, get them a playground, they're happy. So who or what inspired you to do this work?
So, like I said, I stumbled into it accidentally. Like my professional career as a chemist was formulation, coming up with uses of natural products to solve industrial and consumer problems. But I originally grew up in Minnesota. I eventually wandered down to Texas in 1997 and started a blog there about outdoor adventures. Every weekend I'd go to a park or a place and kayak or hike, everything. And it became mildly popular. But what really got people interested is when I started talking about the edible and medicinal plants. I was saying, oh, by the way, there's this plant here and you can do this with it. To the point where people started reaching out and saying, hey, we're going camping next weekend. Do you want to come with? And it's like, yeah, sure, why not? And then things like the Houston Arboretum and the Science Museum started reaching out and say, hey, we hear you teach wild edible plants. And it's like, yeah, I guess if you want me to, I will. And that led to things like the Idiot's Guide Foraging and other books.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
Yeah. So, and it just kind of exploded. And then in 2020, in January, I and two other guys, we started Medicine Man Plant Co. to truly bring these medicinal plants back for modern usage. Followed immediately by the Corona apocalypse, but we're hanging in there.
I like how you described that. That's like literally like what it felt like. Not in
That's
South
pretty much
Dakota,
what it
thank
was.
God, but
Yeah.
for the most part. The other states, I'm sure, were.
Yeah.
So, what would a caveman do? Or what would a caveman do?
Well, let's go back to raising kids because that seemed the thing. And you said you get
Yeah.
your kids outside because they're climbing on everything. Question: are
Yes.
they throwing things at stuff a lot?
Yes. And
Ah,
they like to throw, they like to climb. Um, oh my God, they love dirt. I mean, like
yep.
my mom's like, they need to stay clean. And I'm like, they love dirt.
Yes.
There's nothing I can do about that. They love dirt and grass, and one swears up and down he's a farmer, and I'm like, you're a
Cool.
farmer, let's go with it, buddy. So
Okay,
yes,
so
my kids very much love it.
let's unpack this because there's some really
Yep.
great things here. They are in touch with their cavemanosity.
That's good.
So first, outside. When you are outside in nature, all your senses are being activated, not just your eyes and your hearing, but your nose, your touch. You're picking up the wind. I'm disappearing here. You're picking up the direction of the wind using the hairs on your arms because that tells you which way a predator may be coming, or if you're hunting, which way you got to go into. So you're out there. You're getting all the stimulus. When you're walking on uneven ground, your body is constantly adjusting its sense of balance. It's just all taking brain work and giving that brain the exercise and the input it evolved to need to survive in that ancient world.
Wow.
There's some really good studies that show if you don't give the kids this, that's where you start getting the attention deficit disorder type stuff because their brain isn't getting that full sensory impact that they get just be out there playing around outside. And they've shown even kids that do have attention deficit disorders, if you can get them out 30, 40 minutes, 3, 4 times a week in nature, off trails, not just in a playground with grass, but in the woods, on a stream, something like that, where they can interact with nature and pick up rocks and throw things at stuff and all this sort of thing, their symptoms of attention deficit disorder plummet because their brain is now getting the input it needs. Now, if you were listening closely, you heard me mention several times throwing things at stuff. So let's talk about that.
Yes.
So let's go way back in time now. So just to kind of frame this, the humans, Homo sapiens, have been around for approximately 250,000 years. But you can go back 2.5 million years to the very beginning when the proto-human type creatures finally started figuring out fire and chipping rocks into tools and set themselves on this path to becoming human. One of the things that they did is figured out that if I throw a rock at a creature and I kill it, I get to eat that creature, and there's a lot of good stuff in that creature. There's fats and nutrients and livers and eyeballs and not just the muscles, but all the organ meats and all this stuff. It's great nutrition. And so those that became better at throwing things were better fed, passed their genes on. So this led to a couple of things. One, as they were out, so this was asexual. Both men and women, males and females, were out doing this thing. When they were out gathering, they were throwing the rocks, but the females were still the ones generally carrying the babies. If you listen to a person's chest, the heartbeat is louder on the left side. So holding the babies in the left hand was more soothing to the babies. They were quieter, so it was easier to sneak up. So they believed that was what led to the whole left-handed, right-handed thing. As they held the baby in the left hand, those that had slightly better fine motor control of the right side were the ones that were more effective hunters. Because if you look at everything from penguins to monkeys to everything, an individual animal does have a preference, left or right paw, flipper, whatever. But as a species, it's fairly even. It's only the humans that really have this huge dichotomy of one side preference over the other, and 90% of it is left side. The theory is because by holding the baby in the left hand, it quieted it, soothed it, it less struggled, so you were able to sneak up on the things and kill it with a rock. Okay, so now we're still throwing things at stuff. Evolution doesn't change to accomplish a task. It's just if the certain mutation was beneficial to that task and allowed you to reproduce better, have more kids, whatever, it was more likely passed on. So those that had slightly better motor control, slightly better throwing ability, slightly better eye-hand coordination, all this sort of thing, were better hunters, were better able to pass this on. Now, pop quiz. You're throwing something at a thing.
Mm-hmm.
You have a certain amount of time. You have to release that rock or whatever to accurately hit the target. If you release it too soon or too late, you're going to miss the target. How small do you think that window is?
I'm going to say about 3 seconds.
Oh, not even close. 1/1600th of a second. If you
Whoa.
release 1/1600th of a second too soon or too late, you will miss the target. That's how good our motor control developed. You see, sequential, able to target, able to control the right strength and all this throwing. And so these early primates, they actually developed shoulders and so forth. No other primate and really no other animal can throw with the accuracy and the strength that we have. If you look at like monkeys and chimpanzees nowadays, their main way of throwing thing is a two-handed smash, like to break open a melon or to drop a rock on some other monkey that they want to eat, things like that. We're the only ones that do the actual shoulder throw accuracy sort of thing. But while that was going on in the brain, something else was going on. So we know the different areas of the brain and the different things that are going on there, and what part of the brain controls what part of the body. And one interesting thing is, so you have the part of the brain that controls throwing. We always said it had to be very accurate, very sequential, very precise. But right next to it is the area that controls language.
Mm-hmm.
So as they develop the ability to throw better and better, it's believed then that the language part kind of piggybacked on that part of the brain, which allowed communication, because communication is a precise control of events in order, at this most fundamental thing. So we went from grunting to Shakespeare because we were throwing things at stuff. So when you got the kids out there throwing things at stuff, you are building up their brains, but not only their brains, all the surrounding areas too, including language skills. So the more time they are throwing things at stuff, they have better eye-hand coordination. Their brain is used to doing all sorts of funky calculations. It helps develop the brain and the connections and all this sort of thing. It can even help with the language skills. So have them throwing things at stuff.
That is awesome. I'm going to start teaching my daughter to throw things now. Because she's a little bit delayed on speech and for walking. But I kept asking the speech therapist, I'm like, why isn't she talking yet? A lot. And they're like, well, it's motor first, and then she'll get more speech. And I kept asking them why. And they said, well, they just don't know. It just seems like that's the pattern behavior. Well, you answered it better than they could.
Yeah. And it's my kids from an early age. Yeah. They had some bean bags every evening. We'd set up some bottles and they would throw things at stuff. And it started, first I got jelly beans and then nickels and then quarters, and then rewards. And did that for years, just throwing things at stuff.
Well, now I'm going to tell my husband if he says that I'm throwing stuff, I'm going to say it's my cave woman in me.
Exactly.
Just stay out of my kitchen and we'll be doing good.
I tell people, if you don't have room to throw things at stuff, learn to juggle, because you're throwing things to yourself, and that's still great exercise. That's also a physical workout too. So you're getting some cardiovascular, and then once you get the juggling, then you start walking while juggling, and then you start walking on uneven ground, and then you join the circus, and life is great.
True.
Caveman circus coming up.
That's awesome. So why is it important to ask or talk about the caveman in modern times? You touched on a lot of things with the kids.
Yeah, well, because our bodies evolved for a very different world than what we're now living in. Like, a great question I love asking people is, why are your floors flat?
Well, I don't know.
It's convenient to move across them. You can walk across them without thinking. You can push things across them.
True.
It takes a pain point out of your life. Next question, what did we lose by having flat floors and not having obstacles in our paths?
We lost a sense of balance.
Yes. So if you know Japan, it sounds like we're going sideways now, but Japan figured out a while ago that they have an inverted demographic pyramid. They have way more old people than they have young people. Not any young people are having kids anymore. They figured this out 30 years ago. And so they spent a lot of time researching what can we do to maintain the health of the elderly to minimize the resource drain they are going to cause. And one of the key things they found is going back to walking on uneven ground. The more time they're out walking on even ground, so you're already getting that whole brain stimulation, the brain figuring out your body. To maintain the balance, you use the core muscles. Those are the ones, integral to maintaining balance. The stronger the core muscles are directly correlates to overall health. And then the sense of balance. And one of the things, especially with an improved sense of balance, they are less likely to fall and break a hip, which is a huge problem as you get elderly.
Yeah.
So
in my case, I've fallen quite a bit. So now you're telling me that I need to be outside more.
Yep. Walking on gravel and rocks. Back in January, I did a 30-mile hike in Big Bend National Park here. Actually, it's Big Bend Ranch State Park, which is even bigger and more secluded than Big Bend Ranch or Big Bend National Park. But no one knows about it. Anyway, 30-mile hike, all of it on stones, about the size of tennis balls. So every step required forethought and thinking and watching. And I know my brain was as tired as the rest of my body by the end of that. So, because it was pretty much doing what we were supposed to be doing is paying attention to where our feet are, is it stable and maintaining the balance. But 2 days later, I was just awesomely great, as far as physically.
That's awesome.
So just because I was, again, doing almost an extreme version of that whole caveman lifestyle, but just having to think about where the feet are going rather than walking on autopilot. So
that is just like, wow. I'm just thinking like all the balls, all the ball size rocks to begin with, but then having to maintain balance for that long, that would wear me out.
With a 40-pound pack on your back on top of everything else. It was unsupported, carrying all the water, and it was, 2 days we woke up, the water bottles were frozen, so it was awesome. I'm already planning the return trip.
I can tell you're going to have a longer life.
I hope so. Both my parents are in their late 80s now.
Well, what caveman have to do with that then too? Like when you're talking like the uneven ground and like the hips and the body. So would that mean that a person that tends to go outside more, and does it make a difference with shoes versus without shoes for that?
Okay. So if you look at shoes, humans have had shoes for a long time. We figured out, we can walk barefoot, but having some sort of protection helps too.
Yes.
The more time you can spend barefoot, and there's all sorts of sensory input and simulation and so forth there. But like on this hike, I don't think even the caveman would have done it. The Native Americans in the area, they had the moccasins. It was pretty rare to be completely barefoot, especially when we got cactuses and stuff like that around too. So
it's a whole lot of pokies.
Yeah. Rattlesnakes. Luckily, they were pretty much hibernating.
Yeah. I'm not worried about snakes too much because I'm like, you're going to get killed by anything else before you get killed by a wild animal. Just saying.
Mostly,
Any other ways to die?
We do have a lot of alligators here in Houston. So there is.
That would not be fun.
Yeah, it makes you, look before diving into water.
Not like Minnesota.
No.
The worst thing that could happen there is you'd hit the bottom, or you get like the lake-edge stuff.
Mm-hmm. Leeches, I guess, yeah.
Oh yeah, I don't like leeches. I've only had one of those one time. That was enough to scare the crap out of me.
Yeah, you're not in nature enough then out there.
No, because I'm scared to death of gardener snakes even.
Oh, wow, that would, okay.
Yeah. My friends knew how to scare me. My cat did too. That's one thing too. Would that play into like more of like certain animals then too? Because I had like my one male cat. I could have killed him the day he brought me a live snake in the house. I don't know why he brought me a live one. He brings me live animals. But would that have something to do like with like the animals helping humans fight, or not fight, but like go out and catch their food then too?
Yeah, so let's go back a step. So we know humans domesticated wolves quite a while ago. But before human and wolves, there was human and crows.
Crows?
Crows are very intelligent, and there's still a thing here today where crows and wolves have been found working together. So because the wolves will kill an animal, and then the crows will come after the wolves are done and peck the carcass, the remains of the carcass. But very long time ago, they figured out if they work together, so the crows would be like the scouts for the wolves, and even harass things and separate a calf from the herd or things like that. So the wolves were already kind of primed to work with other animals to hunt. And then the humans showed up, and we were also pretty badass hunters. And we started, leaving remains behind, the bones and so forth, that the wolves would sort of take. And over time, throwing a bone to the wolf, and it came together and said, hey, you know what? If we work together, we can get even more food.
Yeah.
So
Then that doesn't explain cats, because I swear to God, cats got a different mind of their own.
Yeah, well, so cats consider us to be kittens that don't have a lot of hunting skill. Is the cats, they teach their babies to hunt. At first, they bring them the food. So when the cat is bringing you a lizard or a snake or a chipmunk or whatever, it's going, okay, you have proven yourself to be an ineffective hunter, so here, have this. But the whole story of the cats is basically came after we started storing grain. So once you start storing grain, you attract mice. If you attract mice, you attract the things that eat the mice. And so the first cats were feral cats that were, just hanging out around the granaries, eating the mice and the rats that were being attracted there. And then eventually they said, okay, you big two-footed thing there, maybe you can do something for me. But there's a quote, cats were once worshipped as gods, and they have not forgotten it.
So, no, I don't think they did.
They still assume, yes, you giant monkey, you worship me. So
well, that helps, because I've been like, I'm the only one that my cat brings live animals to, live rodents that I don't want.
You're the favorite kitten.
Well, yeah, and then my sons, he'll bring them dead ones. He brings them dead birds, dead anything, and I'm like, why do I get the live?
Well, maybe it's hoping you will pick up the skill of attacking and killing this creature. It's trying to teach you. It's figured with the ones where it's giving the dead animals to, that it's like, nah, they're not going to kill it. But there's still hope with you. I still may be able to make you a full-fledged cat.
Well, I can tell you this much. When my cat found a mouse in the house, one time that I had a mouse in the house, I'm so glad my husband was there. Those two actually did work together. My husband hammered the mouse to death, and my cat was helping him keep the mouse in the corner.
There we go. Yeah.
That's my one time I didn't want to be in the house.
I understand.
How did you become a nationally recognized expert in the edible and medicinal plants? You mentioned about your blog.
Yeah, so the blog, so like I said, in 2008, I was getting so many requests that I set up the Foraging Texas website as a kind of like an after-class study guide. So the people that were taking the classes could then go back and review it. And it just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And when the Afghan war started, a number of military people realized that the plants in Afghanistan were very similar to the plants in Texas, where I was located, very same ecosystems. And so it became popular amongst the soldiers and stuff to take my classes there. Same with Israel. There's a big following there. Canadian homeschoolers have had me give presentations to them, and it just kind of exploded to the point where I have no free time whatsoever. But that's okay, because I'm doing what I was put here to do.
Well, so. I wish that would happen to me.
Oh.
I'm like,
it only took 15 years. So
I can wait. That's what I gotta wait. I'm willing to do it. That's pretty awesome though, because at least you're doing something that you love.
Yep.
And that's the main thing. That's what keeps you young too.
Yep.
Something you like.
Yep.
Most so do definitely. So do you have any tips for parents that they can use in modern times that do stem from the caveman days? I mean, like you touched a lot on putting kids outside or keeping them outside and letting them go outside. Is there any other tips that parents can really use?
Let them climb things. Is the another benefit of climbing and hanging upside down and all the things that kids like to do, swinging on swings and jumping off and all this stuff. How can I describe this? So, like when you get a GPS or even your iPhone, when you're setting the GPS on it, and it has you kind of rotate it and make this ball spin around.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So it's basically imparting in the device its sense of space. Where am I? Humans have that same sort of thing. So all this jumping and climbing and falling and flipping over and tumbling and all this stuff is helping the child develop the sense of body space. Where am I in relationship to everything else? And where are my arms? Where are my feet? Like my theory is the more klutzy you are as an adult, you probably didn't do as much climbing and tumbling and all this sort of thing. So you have a less defined sense of self in the universe. So all that is very, very important, for the overall mind-body connection, because it links the mind to the body as opposed to the mind just floating, in this poorly controlled machine. So they need to be doing all this, not just throwing things at stuff, but they themselves have to be tumbling and climbing and stretching and squeezing through things. Like cats, the whiskers on cats tell them how big of a hole can I get through.
I just thought it meant so they didn't run into the door.
No, it's actually they basically say if the cat can get through, wherever its whiskers are. So humans need that. They need to know, can I squeeze through this? Eventually, they stop trying to squeeze through it because they can look at it and go, no, I can't get through that. Or, oh, yeah, I can get through that.
That explains why my sister kept trying to squeeze her head through the banisters when we were growing up. Yeah. I'm like, why did she keep doing that? It's until one day her head got stuck.
Well, it's the caveman. It's saying, can I do this? I need to understand my mind-body connection. And so all the sort of weird stuff that kids do, a lot of it plays into that, just trying to integrate the mind to the body.
That is so fascinating. I'm just like, I'm really trying to think of more questions because I'm like, my mind just like, wow, I never even thought of all of it. Who would have known?
I have a good question for you.
Okay.
How did we learn what plants are medicinal?
Now, how did we learn that?
Well, there's several theories. Glad you asked. So, okay, let's start in modern times. Someone lost at sea.
Okay.
So the boat sinks, they're in the life raft. They do have their fishing kit. So they're bobbing around in the water and they're fishing, waiting to be rescued. And this has happened multiple times. So there's a really good understanding of what happens to them during this time. So when they're first catching the fish, all they're doing is sushi eating it. They're just eating the meat. Because they go, it's the part of the fish that we eat. I know you can eat sushi. We're going to eat the meat. And the rest is kind of nasty looking. Mm-hmm. But after about 6 weeks, lost at sea, catching the fish, the body now is starting to develop all sorts of malnutrition issues. And over, they've seen it happen. A switch gets flipped in the brain. And the person is looking at this fish they just caught. And now they're going, damn, those eyeballs look good. Ooh. And those guts. Oh, yeah. I want the heart. I want the gills. I want the liver. I want to eat. And their body, like I said, flips a switch. And those things that did disgust them, the body has recognized that there are nutrients it needs. There are things it needs in that fish, beyond just the meat. And the people start going, why did I never eat the eyeballs before? They're fantastic, and not just, fish, but any animal. So
that was body, cannibalism, whatever word I can say.
Cannibalism. Yeah.
Yes. Explains that then.
When we think about like the nose, especially in the modern life right now, our goal is generally not to smell anything or hide the smell with some very pretty floral scents. And that's about it. But our nose is actually a very powerful chemical analysis device. And it's actually the most directly linked to the brain. We're not like greyhounds or anything, the dogs with the amusing
No.
it, but we still have amazing powers. Our eyes, we can distinguish very, very, very subtle colors in plants and in berries. Our sense of smell and sense of sight are the two main things. But this ability to look at our surroundings and go, you know what? Right now, I really need those flowers from that plant there. I don't know why consciously, but something in my brain is saying, you know what? Do that, eat that, eat that. And so I believe it goes back to the body recognizing from a chemical sense, there's something in there it needs to deal with something inside the body. So there's if you look at ancient cultures or even modern cultures like in the Amazon and so forth, where they still have hunter gatherer, and you ask them, how did you learn these plants are medicinal? Around the globe, the answer has always been the plants told me. And which leads to a whole bunch of like spiritual connotations to it. But in the end, my personal belief and a number of others, not everyone, some say, yeah, there's, spirits of the plants telling you, but we are really good at figuring out what's in something just by looking at it and smelling it. And our body, even at a subconscious level, can decide, ooh, yeah, that right now, that would be a really good thing to take, because I think that's going to help you with this, issue over here. So the plants talking to you, they talk to us through sights and smells. So did you know plants scream?
Okay, so I'm not doing okay. I was just curious because I've had that happen. I've had okay, I know they're not called rocks, but they're called crystals.
Okay.
They started talking to me and I thought I was going, woohoo, but apparently not. Because
no, it's your brain is picking up a subconscious influence from said device. So, and going back to that, so when a plant is being attacked by like a bug eating it or an animal eating it, a lot of them release a methylsilicate material. It's a volatile molecule. We know it as oil of wintergreen or the wintergreen flavor.
Mm-hmm.
What this does then is alerts the other plants around it. Hey, this plant over here, it's being damaged by something eating it. So we should probably trigger our defenses, increase the bitterness or herbicide, pesticide type compounds in the plants. And it's not just the plants of the same species that are picking it up. Most plants can pick up this methylsilicate wintergreen and respond like as if they're building up defenses against a predator. So I always thought that
like why my house plants do the same thing too, because I've noticed that.
Most likely. If you want to scare your plants, pop a wintergreen lifesaver in your mouth and then just breathe on them. And they go,
I'm just trying to keep them alive.
Something bad is happening. So,
well, I'm really good at keeping them alive, but I was just curious because I'm like, when one seems to get sick, it's like the rest of them, like they're doing something. I can't explain it, but it's like they're doing something to bring up that other one that looks like it's dying.
Yeah,
I've noticed
the plants are talking. They are releasing chemicals. They evolved because it benefits them, and just random chance, it's worked out.
I'm so glad that I'm not crazy then, because I've heard my plants talk to me, and I've told my son, the one that wants to be a farmer, I'm like, he named his farmer girl, and anyways, he talks to her and reads her stories, and I'm like, well, okay.
There you go. Yeah,
I'm gonna keep them alive. We've had enough scientific studies on that, like how to keep them alive. Here, I thought it was just the oxygen, but I'm gonna try that. I don't want to scare the plants. Maybe the weeds. Would that work with weeds outside by chance?
Oh yeah. But the thing is, so what it does is makes them tougher. It makes them, it builds up their defenses.
I don't want to do that to weeds then.
Right. You want the weeds to be weak and a false sense of security. You don't want to scare them and start building up their things.
So if I talk to them bad, would that help?
Pardon? Probably wouldn't hurt.
I'll have to try that.
Ugly weed. So, we have immune systems, right? Yeah. Up until 2 years ago, anyway, humans had immune systems. Apparently, we don't right now. Plants have an immune system too. all living things have an immune system because they're constantly attacked under bacteria, fungi, viruses.
Well, yeah, that's why I'm like outside helps build that. Like animals build
Mhm.
that. Cats and dogs build that. That's why I'm a huge advocate of having animals when your kids are little, because I'm like, how do you think you build a strong immune system? All the
Yep,
stuff they're
most
carrying
definitely.
helps
Yep,
us.
yep. Oh, there's so many different places we could go with that. But
Well, yeah, we could.
uh,
That would be good
so
though.
okay. So Columbus discovers America,
Hmm.
and then all these Westerners come in, and suddenly all these diseases from the old world come and infect the new world, but very few diseases from the new world affected the old world. Part of it is because in the old world, they have a long history of living there in the same building with the pigs and the chickens and the cows and the goats and the sheep and all this sort of thing. So you have a bunch of animals
Hmm.
together in a building. Whereas in the Native Americans and Native South Americans and Central Americans, they had dogs domesticated, but they didn't really have many animals that they lived with. The animals were over there, we were over here.
Hmm.
So when you got animals and humans together, you got cross-viral pollination, if you will. So you
Well,
get
yeah, that makes sense.
so you have a lot more diseases where you have animals and humans together, but you also have a more robust immune system because it knows how
Well,
to
yeah.
handle this. It evolved in that swamp of disease and filth. And then the people that didn't have that background, suddenly every disease that came over with them was terrible and wiped them out. So
Wow.
the things like lupus and
Hmm.
other autoimmune diseases, asthma, are they found in third world countries where the kids are playing outside more and amongst with the animals. Here in the U.S., the Amish and farm kids have much lower incidences of these autoimmune diseases because from the get-go they are exposed to the chemicals. Their body figures out how to fight it. They build up all the different antibodies. There's some really interesting studies that suggest that one of the reasons that lupus affects females more than males, significantly higher, is at least boys sometimes are allowed to play in the dirt. But the girls, they were like, oh
I
no,
never.
yeah, no, get out of that mud puddle. You're going to get your pretty, they weren't, so they didn't get that bacterial flooding of their system that they knew to build it up. So then later on, when they're let loose into the world, their immune system doesn't know what's good and what's bad and just attacks everything in sight.
So that means that I'm building my immune system by teaching my boy. Why I keep teaching them, but I'm like, go out and get your mud and boots is what I call them. Because I'm
Yep.
like, go out in the mud, go jump, because that's what I love to do. I love to dance in the rain. I love to do
Yep.
all of that stuff because
Yep.
it's to me it's healthy.
Mm-hmm.
So that's going to be
Soil-based
building my immune
organisms
system
are,
too.
yeah, wash out cuts and punctures and stuff like that. You don't want to get tetanus or infection, but
No,
in general, yeah, the day-to-day playing in the dirt, that's good for you.
I just don't want my kids to eat dirt. The one took and grabbed the turtle and tried to eat the turtle, and I'm like, oh, I'm like, that's caveman enough for me.
Yep.
Thank God he didn't pick up salmonella from the turtle. But I'm just saying, yeah, them boys, they give you a run for the money, but now I know my guy gave me 4 of them.
Well, there we
Who
go.
knew? I needed to put balance in my life, literally
Yeah,
going outside
you
and
need
learning how to do
exactly.
that balance. That
It's a
is
gift to
so
you.
awesome. So then, one of the things I was thinking too is like when you're going outside and you're doing these different things, what weather is more ideal then? Like weather
Ah,
wise,
oh,
because
what a great question.
yeah,
Oh, okay, audience, we did not plan this question. But let's talk about intermittent cold therapy. So, another pop quiz question. Homo sapiens have been through how many ice ages? And going back to the 2.5 million years ago, how many ice ages have our evolutionary process taken us through?
I don't know, probably 1 or 2 if I had to guess.
So, Homo sapiens have survived 5 ice ages. And it's right now it's estimated that going back to the 2.5 million years ago, there have been 12 ice ages that we survived through. We
Wow.
are designed for cold weather. Cold weather being exposed to cold weather has all sorts of health benefits. So
I'm going to live longer.
Oh, yeah. So intermittent cold therapy. If you can spend at least an hour of your time a day under 64 degrees with shorts and nothing else, it's socially acceptable, amount of covering. Or, better yet, 5 minutes, 10 minutes in ice water. But this has positive effects on the human body. First off, okay, you might hear it. Okay, yeah, you need to take a cold shower. You might be telling this to your kids here in a few years as hormones and stuff start take over.
I heard like the Wim Hof, and I'm like, you're not getting me to do that.
Oh yeah, well he's the man. You got to follow him. But so cold showers and intermittent ice therapy actually raise libido rather than quenching it. So that's something to keep in mind.
So no wonder I told my husband I can't have cold water because I'm like, I want him more.
No comment. But anyway, another thing. So in the human body, we actually have two types of fat cells. We have the white fat, which is basically the marshmallows, just one big glob of fat in a ball, stored, hips, wherever, belly, to if we end up in a starving situation, then we'll start breaking it down and releasing it and using it. But we also have brown fat. And brown fat, what that is, it's called brown fat because the cells look brown because they're high with iron. And instead of just a big glob of fat, it has tiny little bubbles of fat in it. These are our immediate use fat. One of the primary uses is when we shiver. Shivering is a mechanism to maintain body temperature so that we don't freeze to death. And it requires a lot of energy. And so the body stockpiles a certain amount of brown fat cells to power shivering. The more exposure you have to cold, the body goes, oh, we need to increase more of this fat and put it in the brown cells rather than the white cells. And so because this jackass keeps getting cold, get in the cave, get by the stop going outside in Minnesota. But that's great for you because then your fat is going to be formed in these little tiny immediate use brown fat cells, brown adipose tissue for immediately use, keeping you warm. So by keeping yourself cold, you actually do burn more fat, burn more energy. It's, and your body gets trained to first fill the brown fat rather than the white fat. So it's great for weight loss and things of that nature.
I was just going to say that because I'm like, I remember my mom said that back in her day when she was young, that for one of the tools for weight loss, what they did was like saunas and stuff like that to help lose the weight. And I'm thinking, well, that's got to be the dumbest thing to do because I'm just thinking, like, in my case, my blood pressure would drop.
Yeah.
But I'm just thinking, well, how would that help? And then they had like machines that would like vibrate it off, apparently, too. Just weird things.
And with the sauna, you're mainly losing water weight. You're putting yourself in a dehydration. But your immune system gets stronger when you're exposed to cold because, again, it's an evolutionary sort of thing. When you're out and about, just going outside into nature, your immune system, your innate and your active, both become placed on like high alert because when it takes energy. Your body has to decide, what am I going to do? Am I going to bump up the immune system or am I going to build some other part in the body? Well, if they're outside, they're walking around in the wild. This is the time when we need the immune system. So that evolutionary benefit of your immune system kicking up as you were outside just, again, benefited those that had that and it got spread on. So being outside raises the immune system. When they had everyone say, oh, you can't go outside when you had to stay in the houses, it's like,
well, yeah.
What? Yeah.
That makes it worse. That's what I kept swearing up and down. I'm like, why would you stay inside?
Yeah.
And like outside is going to be better all the time because there's more. There's more.
Well, yeah. And besides just the natural increase in the power of the immune system when you're outside in nature, vitamin D that you get from the sun.
Yes.
I mean, most Americans, the sun has become, it's the big cancer object in the sky. It's like you go out in the sun, you may as well swallow uranium. No. You are not a vampire. Get your vitamin D.
Yeah, I'm just like, just because I'm as white as they come, I'm like, just certain hours I gotta avoid the sun. From 11 a.m. until 5 p.m. That's all.
Yeah. Well,
Oh,
and the
I've
whole
never
white
been.
skin, that was an adaptation as they moved from Africa, where they needed the melatonin to protect themselves from the sun, into the northern climes, where they then suddenly were, running into vitamin D deficiencies. So, and
Well,
that affects the immune system, the mood, the brain, all sorts of things in the body.
okay, well, that's what I was wondering, because I told my husband, I said, I swear up and down, I feel better when I'm out in the sun more in the summer. That's why I was thinking, like, I want to move where it's warm and there is no snow. So this way I don't have to deal with arthritis pain, but then I'm also happier.
Yep.
But now after you're telling me this, well, I want to live longer. So I guess I just got to stay in cold South Dakota.
Yeah. Cold South Dakota with a sunroom.
True.
There you go.
That fixes that problem.
I'll tell you here. So
Artificial lights.
yeah, again, for the audience, I did my undergraduate at South Dakota State University. So I know South Dakota, love South Dakota. If I was not in Texas, South Dakota would be my second choice.
Well, that's
probably towards the Black Hills. So,
well, that's what I was wondering. I'm like, is that going to be better than like the Watertown, Sioux Falls area? I've never been to Black Hills. I've been told about it, but I'm like, I don't know which is better.
I'll tell you, walking around on a hill is better than walking around on flat ground. So again, for exercise and just general body health, hills are better. Now, if you're on a bicycle and lose control, it's a problem. But walking, yeah, you want hills. That's one of the problems. Like I said, this is 10 hours west of me, still in Texas, but Houston is flat. There are no hills whatsoever. So I spend a lot of time just taking stairs up places and things like that, usually carrying jugs of sand or things, just
So in other words, a great parenting tip is to move out to the Black Hills area and let my boy and have a fenced in area, probably a shock fence, but just put the boys out there then.
Yep.
They not like a shock necessarily.
Make a little wigwam or something like that. A little shelter for them to huddle in the cold.
They'll probably keep each other warm, knowing how they are.
I'm just get a couple of dogs with them, and they'll be fine.
Well, yeah, the one. I mean, like the dog. I swear up and down, my dog. She's 12 years old, and she's so in love with my son, and I'm just like, whoa. But that explains, though. I was thinking like that time and space. You were saying like for the space where we are at in our body. Because like my one son has sensory processing disorder, and that's a lot of what it is he doesn't know where he's at in his body. So I'm thinking that outside movement, no wonder why when we went to Colorado and he was able to do a lot of that more like the rock climbing type things, no wonder why he was more happier.
Jungle gyms and all that are great. Yeah.
That's awesome. This has been extremely fascinating.
It's welcome to my world, I guess.
Well, yeah, this is just fascinating. I love it. So what's the best way for our audience to get in contact with you?
All right. So the center of my thing is medicinemanplantco.com. So that is where I actually have the ancient plants for modern issues. But because I have the scientific background, I do need scientific proof that these things have those powers. So all the formulations are based on scientific studies, scientific research. There's a lot of medicinal plants out there. Some actually do exactly what they're said. A few of them, not as good, but they were what the people had. So they said, it'll do this. The stuff I'm doing has that. That's the main thing. From there, you can get to the Foraging Texas website. Important thing about the Foraging Texas website, even though it has the word Texas in the title, most of those plants are found all over North America. One of the things I quickly figured out when I moved down to Texas, a lot of the summertime weeds and plants and flowers of Minnesota, South Dakota are wintertime plants down here. So right now we have all the dandelion and the chickweed, because if the plants don't care about geographic boundaries, they care about ecosystems. And,
okay, that makes sense.
And when is the ecosystem the same? When are the temperatures and humidity and soil temperatures and all that the same? Well, in Texas, the winters are the same as the summers up there. So we have a lot of that. If you go to the website, every plant has a Texas range map showing what counties it's found in, and then also a North American map showing which states and Canadian provinces the plants are found in. But again, going back to the Medicine Man Plant Code, that's where I have all the science and the plants and all that sort of thing too. So I would start there. Lots of podcasts and things like that.
That is so fascinating. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And I appreciate everybody's time and energy in either watching or tuning in through the podcast. Appreciate everybody's time and energy. And thank you so much, Mark, for being here. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure.